These days you can find weight loss advice everywhere you turn, and as somebody who's tried probably most of the tips out there at some point throughout the years, today I want to share my unsolicited opinion on which ones I no longer follow and which ones are total BS. I'm guilty of having preached this in the past. Eat when you're hungry and stop when you're full. Sounds too simple, right? People who give this advice mean well. Their idea is not to rely on numbers and, calories in MyFitnessPal, but rather to clue into your body and figure out what it's actually telling you that it needs. The problem is that this advice tends to work best if you're already eating fairly balanced meals. The reason being that if you are eating Cheetos or Oreos or things that are designed with a lot of work put into them to make them highly palatable and to make you want to eat more, it's not as simple as just stopping when you feel full, because it's going to take you a long time to feel full, and you'll probably consume more calories than your body really needs in that process. If you're having a lovely tofu or salmon bowl, this advice applies better because you can recognize when you're full and say, okay, I'm good, I can stop. But when you're consuming highly processed foods or fast foods, for example, they're so calorie dense and lacking in fiber and protein that this advice doesn't hold up so well. And honestly, if you eat a bag of chips, you might even still be hungry, even though you've consumed a lot of calories. So stopping when you're full, it's gonna take a while. What I would suggest doing instead is learning to stop when you feel satisfied. Satisfied versus full, they're not the same thing. When you feel full, it's just a response to the receptors in your stomach. Whereas when you feel satisfied, you can learn to feel satisfied after you've had a certain amount of Cheetos. The craving is gone, you feel like you've gotten what you were looking for, maybe that was salt or something sugary, and you'll be able to recognize that point sooner than if you're just looking for that fullness cue. I really hate this piece of advice. So the idea behind this advice is to eat less processed foods. Really, that's what they're getting at. But there are a lot of perfectly safe foods, for example, enriched breads, that have ingredients that I know I couldn't pronounce, but that are completely harmless. Similarly, there are foods that really are not very health promoting, such as common food dyes. They're really easy to say, right? I can say red 40, but that doesn't mean that it's an ingredient. Just because I can say it, I shouldn't be psyched to see it in a package of food that I'm about to buy. And on top of that, people just have different health literacy levels, different familiarity with different ingredients. So somebody who's never seen quinoa before might be confused. I know I was, but it's a totally healthy, fibrous grain that's great to include in your diet. So this advice just seems really simplistic and ignores so many layers that go into what makes a food nutritious or not. I often see people in the health and wellness space promoting this idea that you should look for foods or, packages that have 5 or fewer ingredients. And again, the idea is just to minimize unnecessary additives and ingredients that don't really serve you. But like the last point, it's just way too simplistic. And this doesn't really teach you to actually recognize different ingredients and learn about what goes into different foods and make the determination for yourself whether you think that something aligns with your goals and priorities or not. There are plenty of extremely nutritious and health promoting bars, for example, that have lots of different nuts and seeds and grains going into them, and there's probably more than 5 ingredients. And does that mean that we shouldn't buy them because it automatically makes them unclean or too processed? No.
Do you want a magazine or something? It's gonna be boring if you're just sitting by yourself.
The idea behind this advice is that when you are completely mindful and aware of what you're eating, no distractions going on, then you can be more aware of that point when you feel full. And it can also just help you to enjoy the flavors of your food more. And these are great intentions, but I think it automatically assumes that if you're distracted, then you're gonna suddenly overeat and not even realize that you're eating 5 plates of food and you blacked out when you went to go get seconds, or you completely didn't realize that you ate the whole box of Girl Scout cookies. And I don't think that's really how most of the time it plays out, at least in my experience, but I just don't think it's very realistic. A lot of people are dealing with young children while they're eating, and maybe having that iPad out or the TV on helps them to get through the meal without any breakdowns or meltdowns. Or maybe you work a busy schedule and you want to be able to watch YouTube on your lunch break, and I don't see anything so wrong with that. Furthermore, I think it can actually help some people. So I know for myself, if I'm like playing a game or watching something while I'm having a meal, I'm probably gonna forget to go back for more, and that actually buys me more time, because then you may have heard that, you know, after 20 minutes or so, your body can really recognize whether it's full or whether you're still hungry. And so if I'm distracted, I'm actually probably not gonna get up and go get more food, and that can benefit me if I'm trying to lose weight. Many health professionals and dietitians encourage people not to remove triggering foods from their environment, but actually to keep them there and kind of learn to live with them and learn to enjoy them in moderation. And kind of the idea is to take the power away from the food and learn to gain some sense of food freedom and be able to make your own decisions and not feel like you'll always be out of control if you have cookies in the house. And I think this just depends so much on a case-by-case basis. If you have a history of disordered eating, then absolutely take your dietitian or therapist advice around this. But for somebody who just feels like, if I have XYZ food in the house, I'm always gonna eat it, I relate a lot to this. And it's not true for everything. I don't think it can just be a blanket statement, but there are some things like baked goods that I've just learned I do much better, especially if I'm in a phase where I'm trying to lose some body fat. It can benefit me not to have those foods that I know are extremely tempting to me in the house. And I don't think that makes it into this forbidden food that I can never touch and it just makes me go crazy with desire for it. Rather, I'm just way more conscious about when I actually want it, and if I want to enjoy it, then I'll enjoy it outside of the house. And I might keep other things in the house that feel like a treat, but things that I know I'm not likely to kind of overeat and eat past my satisfaction. So again, this just goes back to getting to know yourself. So figure out if you're somebody who benefits from moderation, and maybe if you do say that something isn't allowed in the house, then it does make you want it more. Other people do pretty well with kind of taking an abstinence approach, where at least in the house you'll have like maybe an alcohol-free zone at home, or ice cream free zone if that's the thing that you tend to kind of have trouble with moderating. It doesn't mean that one approach is right or wrong. Just find whatever end of the spectrum or middle ground works best for you when you are trying to cut back on those foods. And a kind of middle ground approach might be to keep the foods at home, but keep them in a very inconvenient and not highly trafficked or visible place in the house. So, if you have a basement, like put the ice cream down there, or put it all the way in the back and keep something like a fruit popsicle up front. And that can help to influence which you're more likely to grab. People who say this are really just getting at the fact that food choices do have a really big impact on our body weight and weight maintenance, and it's usually the most modifiable factor in people's lifestyles. For most people, I would say it's easier to make tweaks to their food habits than it is to increase their exercise. If you're already exercising, there's a limit to where you can do that safely, right? So if you're approaching weight loss by purely just increasing your exercise, there's going to be a point where that's not really healthy anymore and you're over exercising. The thing is, it's not true for everybody, and it really depends on somebody's current habits. For some people, exercise will be the thing that helps them to kind of tip over into a caloric deficit from just maintenance. So if you're already eating pretty healthy, but you live a really sedentary lifestyle, have a sedentary job, you might be able to benefit a lot from just adding in one more exercise session per week, or increasing your non-exercise activity, such as just parking farther away, walking, getting up more throughout the day, dragging out tasks, things like that can add up a lot. So although I agree with this piece of advice that exercise is not the thing that's gonna make or break your weight loss progress, it is a tool in your toolbox when it comes to losing weight. And along those same lines, exercise can have so many benefits beyond just creating a calorie deficit. It helps with mood, stress management, improved sleep, and those things can all help with weight loss too. So I don't want people to think that exercise just doesn't matter anymore and all you have to do is cut calories like crazy until you're just not enjoying eating anymore. So there you have it, 6 pieces of advice that I no longer follow when it comes to weight loss. And I'm gonna go now because my ponytail is giving me a headache. So see you next time.